WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today, each and every Tuesday at 2:30 with replays at 7 p.m. Star Communications, Channel 16. We're simulcast on WCLN Radio. We're talking today about farm workers, and we're talking with two folks that know quite a bit about that. One of them is Olivia Antonio-Ventura, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Roberto Rosales. Victoria. That Olivia Antonio-Ventura, that's a typical name kind of thing for Latin America or Mexico. Just talk to us about your name a little bit. Tell us how that works, because you've got, it's like there's one behind the other. It's unlike typically what we hear.
So in a Hispanic population household, usually the child has to use both of their parents' last names. So Antonio comes from my dad's side, and then Ventura is from my mom's side. So usually we have to combine both of our last names together, but they always put like a hyphen in between, so they don't mix it up and make it as a one whole.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of folks over the years, when I would introduce somebody or I would be talking to somebody and I would give them the whole name, it's almost reversed from what we do here with the typical names that we use. So I'm glad you clarified that. But I want to start also with a conversation about your background. When it comes to farm worker safety, we think a lot about folks on technology like tractors or forklifts that's got computers on them, and making sure that people are looking and observing what's going on around them. But particularly one of the areas that's somewhat new is the farm worker safety program that you guys are heading up here in North Carolina. And we've been fortunate to have a number of counties come on board. So I want to start with how you kind of got involved in this and allow you time to give us a little bit of your history. And Roberto, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, so the Farmworker Health and Safety Program at NC Cooperative Extension started back in 2014 with the Wayne County as being the inaugural county. I think it was something that came from the industry. Philip Morris International approached NC State University to provide, some type of program for farm workers specifically. So that just kind of, it was just the timing, with a lot of things in life, some things just line up and start happening. And, extension, I think there's a lot of extension agents across the state that, do some type of programming to their capacity. Obviously at this moment, language is a huge barrier for communicating with that labor force. So, this program coming on in 2014 just, caught on really quick with the growers and the employers, and helping them meet a need, and making sure that they're being compliant with industry and both federal requirements. So, 2014 was the start, and, as it kept catching on, more counties were interested. We were able to secure more funding from, other ways to supplement, the need. And so now, with some of the, COVID did present a lot of challenges for our program and extension as a whole, but it also opened up opportunities for our program to expand. And so that's how we were able to bring on Olivia, and we're on the process of expanding to other counties. Of course, this is all grant funded, so we're always looking for, ways to keep, our educators on, because, we're in our 7th year or 8th year now, and we see how challenging and it is for agents to reach that community. And so having somebody in our role in those counties and in those communities, we're able to bridge a lot of that, those gaps that are, have been there for years. And so, we get pulled in many directions, but I think overall, I think it's great to have us and help, work with our agents, work with the community and bringing that. And I think that's what the premise of this program is, to improve that dialogue and communication between, we focus on farm workers as our primary target audience because of the, some of the risk factors that you mentioned. But also, it's not just, it's the people around that, the employers, the partners, the community that provide programs and services, and even the state and even extension. So I think our program being in this position, we're allowing, to help foster the, that relationship there.
Olivia, one of the things that Roberto mentioned was the years of COVID. How challenging was it for you from a educational perspective and communicating with a lot of farm workers out there to talk to people about and get them to understand putting a mask on and trying to stay distance from people? Because we're talking a market of folks that is used to getting up early, getting on a bus, going out to a job, and they're automatically compressed. Talk to us about that, the challenges of COVID.
So as Roberto mentioned, I came on board with COVID funding. So I came on board in December of 2020. So COVID was had already started. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't there for the beginning part, but I was there for the second part. But it was challenging. Some farmers were not allowing us to go out because of restrictions. We had to limit what we could do also because of the restrictions that were going on. But as far as implementing the use of wearing a face mask and also other protection, it wasn't much as a hard task to do. We would simply go out there and the first thing we would do before we would begin our trainings is provide sets of face masks and display them out and just kind of engage them to grab one and put it on. And then we also developed a flip chart related to COVID, but made it more like farm worker friendly. After they would put on the face mask, we would go over like some of the COVID information and what we could do in order to protect themselves or ourselves in general during this whole pandemic.
Roberto, was there opportunities for folks to be vaccinated and that kind of thing and to take the shot? Was that something that was available?
Yeah, so, I think, there's always been, a challenge in reaching that community and getting them behind. There's already, just because of the history of, the immigrant community, trusting government or having information, from people that they trust. When the pandemic started, that's kind of what we were working with. And so, our program, we had already been implementing the program for a couple of years now. And so from our standpoint, we were able to build a lot of great relationships with both nonprofit, state agencies, and other programs that were offering services to the farm workers. And so when the pandemic started, we were, at that time it was just me because we lost 2 of our educators that left the program just right before the pandemic. But we put out I put out some videos on COVID, and everybody just wanted to see what Extension was doing for farm workers and what the state was doing for farm workers. Because obviously congregate living is, that's the way it was going to spread. If somebody got COVID on the farm, it was going to spread like wildfire, which it did. And so, it just kind of caught us all by surprise. And so because of those relationships, we were able to, work with the employers, work with the programs, work with, even like, a lot of the retail, shopping centers and stuff like that, places so we could set up, locations to, offer vaccination. And so that was something that was different because it was bringing people into new spaces that they weren't aware and including people. So, and then working with the state to offer this, because Extension is not necessarily in the health field. So we had to partner with a lot of the health agencies to bring that. And so vaccinations were offered right when they were being, when they were arriving to North Carolina. There's a giant joint employer, what they call, and they bring in a large number of the H-2A folks. And then we also have the local migrant and seasonal folks that come. So, vaccination events, coordination, a lot of what we did as a program was make a lot of those connections so they could work together to offer these vaccinations. And they were done in convocation centers on the farm, at these shopping centers when they were arriving. A lot of the outreach workers were connecting with the employers to work for the first time. Sometimes they didn't even know they existed. So our program really helped, build that connection, and we were part of a lot of panel, Zoom calls, working with universities. It was all over the place, to really, and we really had a high, acceptance rates of the vaccine in the farm worker community. I think there was a lot of hesitancy, especially when it came out. So that was the reason we put together the toolkit that Olivia mentioned, because when you're working with this community, you can't just write something down and hand it to them. It's a lot of adult learning. So our program, what it stands out a lot about our education is that we bring information to that community where they're at. So that's why we're out in the farms, we're out in different spaces providing this information. And obviously with COVID that was difficult, but it was a priority once we knew what precautions we needed to take to go back out to the field. We were considered critical to infrastructure, so we needed people were still arriving in North Carolina with no information or what North Carolina was doing, and so that's why it was important for us to get out there and do this education. And then so there was a lot of opportunity for vaccination, and it wasn't just our program; it was the collaborative of all different kinds of partners.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to kind of get into another subject area, but I don't want to necessarily move away from COVID because I think this is critically important. One of the things I want to kind of hear is your perspective on what kind of support you got from the growers and others that actually utilize the migrant labor field. But in this second segment, I would like for you to kind of just talk about you and your experience, because both of you guys grew up in that environment and worked as migrant farm workers. So we're going to take a quick break and come right back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking about an issue and a subject that's all around us every day that we depend on for survival. Stay tuned. Call a friend. We'll be back in a moment.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. Our guests today are folks that know a lot about farm worker safety. And the reason they know that is because they themselves at one time was farm workers. Olivia Antonio-Ventura. I'd just like to kind of say that and make sure I got it right, Olivia. And also, I want to introduce again to you Roberto Rosales. And Roberto, one of the things I want to mention in coming into this second segment is you're a graduate of Virginia Wesleyan College in 2011, got your undergraduate. You're currently working on your master's degree. So I want to congratulate you on your academic journey there. That's an interesting journey. And Olivia, I want to kind of go to an area in this second segment that kind of speaks to the personal experience, because both of you guys have grew up in a migrant farm worker environment. You understand it from the literally grassroots level. I'll start with you. Just talk about the journey and through your eyes what you saw.
So my family, they originally migrated from Oaxaca, Mexico, which is the southern part of Mexico. They arrived in Florida in 1996. And then they had me in 1997 in a little town called Naples, Florida. So I'm originally from Florida. My parents started working as farm workers there. They did tomatoes, peppers, squash, onions, and other types of fruits and vegetables. And then they just started a migrant from Florida to North Carolina, and that's when the journey started. So we would come to North Carolina to do blueberry during the blueberry season. So usually blueberry season starts around May and then ends like middle July, late July. And whenever blueberry season ends, they would migrate up to the north to New Jersey and do blueberry again there. So we would stay there for a couple of months, and then we would start all over again, to Florida, and then up to North Carolina, and then New Jersey. So whenever I turned 3, my parents decided that it was time for us to settle down because I was going to have another sister, and they didn't want me to miss any education. They wanted me to pursue something in life. So that's when we decided to stay here in North Carolina in a little town called Godwin, North Carolina. So it's kind of borderline with Cumberland County, not too far from Clinton. It's like 30 minutes. So that's where I grew up. Went to school in the Midway area, and I did my high school and my associates at Sampson Early College High School. I did my associates in early childhood education. So then I decided I want to pursue a little bit further in. So I did my bachelor's degree in education as well at Fayetteville State University. Currently, I don't know. I haven't made a decision if I want to continue with my master's or not, but hopefully I will. But prior to that, I did do farm worker growing up. Started working at the age of 15. The reason that I started was my dad got in a bad car accident during my freshman year. I needed to help my mother with financially. So my mom, I remember she took me to a tobacco place here in Sampson County. I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. But she taught me, the first thing that she told me, she was like, you need to cut the flower. This is how you cut it. So she kind of showed me hands-on. And once I got the hang of it, I was able to do it by myself. The first year was a struggle. Again, I was young, but thankfully only did it for 2 months because of the summer. And then every summer I would go back and help her out as well. And then we would also do blueberries in White Lake. That was a fun experience. I really enjoyed it. I got to meet a lot of friends during that time. So for people that don't know how to pick blueberries, so typically you get a bucket, you have to tie it around your waist, and the blueberries are like a tree kind of, so you just pick them and then put them in your bucket, and then once you're done with your little buckets, you can either have 4 or 5. You have to take them to like a little dispenser, and then they'll like put the blueberries in this big gate thing, and then they give you back your buckets with your little tickets. So that was fun. I really enjoyed it. That's probably not what I wanted to do my whole life. I did want to persuade, like I said, be someone in life. So
it's interesting just listening to what you talked about. This was a challenge. I mean, for most people, you're talking 12, 15-hour days.
Yes. So it was a challenge. We would go in at 6 in the morning, sometimes 5, depending. Usually we try to be there earlier just because we want to beat the sun. Because once they hit 12 or 1-ish, the sun would be like outrageous. So it would be hard to work. The temperature would make us like get overheated. Back then, I had no idea what heat stress was. No one ever gave me a training. If I would have known what I know now, I probably would have done more protection of myself. So I never got the whole background about wearing light colored clothes or wearing long sleeves or wearing comfortable shoes like I know now.
And just the exposure oftentimes is a thing that's critically important. You mentioned gloves and other things, but as you went through that process, it's almost like I'm hearing you say that was a learning process for you. At the same time, you were able to reach out and accomplish academic credentials as well. So I'm thinking with all the things you went through, and there's a lot of people probably listening now, and they have to ask themselves the question, what excuse have I got not to do something? You just think about what you went through. And all this was a new kind of environment for your parents.
Yeah, so at one point I'm really thankful for what I got to experience, because now as an educator, I can educate my friends, my farm worker friends, and I can give them like my example of how it was whenever I was one of them. So not only do I get to be like in their shoes, but I get to like inform them how they can protect themselves whenever they're working, so that they don't experience nothing bad during work hours.
Interesting. Roberto, there is this kind of difference in responsibilities as growing up in the environment that you did as a male versus a female. And in today's world, we try to not distinguish the difference, but I always see a difference. There's a difference in the things that you ended up doing that maybe Olivia would never have been asked to do. Talk about your journey, because you did quite a bit of traveling up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of similarities in my story with Olivia's, and I think it's a similar story with a lot of folks that do farm working across the country. But it's also about the time and the era. I think my family migrated here, or my dad migrated here earlier in the 80s, and there's a lot of things happening. At the policy level, along with the Amnesty Act in '86, and fortunately my parents were able to get residency during that time, and a lot of people weren't able to get that, and so we see a lot of disparities there and challenges. When you're doing farm working, and then you add the immigration status to that, but with that, our parents still migrated a lot. From Florida, southern Florida, in Immokalee area, all the way up to Virginia, and then the different states. And when you talk about, migrant farm workers, really it just kind of depends on where the work is, who's paying the most, and that presents, a lot of challenges both for the farms and for the workers, because that varies depending on what, who's going to get, paid them more money. What do they like that area? And so anyway, so that's how we ended up in Virginia, because there was a lot of tomato, and where Olivia's family did more blueberries, my family did more tomato work. And so, there's a different set of skills that come with each different type of harvest. So we asked my parents, our family was getting bigger, and I didn't work as much as probably Olivia did, because I had older sisters, and they really, did a lot of the work, financially helping my parents. And so I got to work, but it wasn't like out of a situation that's Olivia's parents and family was in. But, I got to experience it, and even going through all of that, after that, kind of going back to what Olivia mentioned, I think they always, want us to get up out of agriculture, find a better job. But, I think it's a job that brings a lot of pride and humility, and I think that's why I do this work, because I like to instill that they're professionals. This is a skilled job. Not, you mentioned it earlier on, like this is not something that anybody can just come and do, and that's what I take pride in. And going through similar experiences of moving up and down the East Coast, I went into working a lot of the programs that we partner with now. They actually provided services for me and my family, to survive, to get the services and needs that we needed. Telemon, East Coast Migrant Head Start, Migrant Ed, all of those provided some type of service in my journey to creating, my, opportunities in my career, and then going into college. I've worked in so many jobs: landscaping, construction. Worked in the medical field. I've been a teacher, but this is one of the jobs that keeps, bringing me back, and the one that I connect with the most, and providing, all the information that we have from personal experience, but also from, the work that we do.
We're going to take a break and come back and talk a bit more about the job that you're doing now. It's interesting to hear both your experiences, and it galvanizes the reality and importance of family to your lives and what that means. So stay right there, and we're going to come back in a moment, try to get more details on how you're keeping people safe in our communities. And to me, that's the critical thing, that somebody has to stand up and say, don't do this or don't do that. It's going to hurt you in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about farm worker safety with two people who know a lot about that. And we'd like to ask you to call a friend. Stay tuned. You need to know more about farm worker safety.
At home or away, knowing who is at your door is priceless. Star Communications is here to help with its doorbell security camera by Skybell. Live viewing and two-way audio equips you with the ability to always see and greet anyone that shows up at your door. If this is the kind of confidence you are looking for, call Star Communications today at 1-800-706-6538 to learn more about this intelligent security that you can always depend on.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on air. We want to thank you for being with us again. J.W. Simmons, your host. We're talking with Roberto Rosales. We're also talking with Olivia Antonio-Ventura. Roberto, Olivia, you just gave us an interesting background on how you got here, literally to this seat this morning through a lot of hard work, a lot of sunshine, sometimes 12, 15 hours a day. Both of you have achieved academic abilities here. You have chosen to dedicate this portion, upcoming portion, whatever it may be, your life, to educating people of things that may harm them or be dangerous, should I say, in the farm worker community. Let's explore that a little bit, because we talked a bit about COVID. Obviously, that was a challenge for everybody. What is the biggest challenges, Roberto, that you're seeing now as you look at trying to get a message across to keep people safe in an environment that they maybe walked into the first time? They really are not familiar with the expectations of the larger community, but yet now they're living in a community, and maybe, I don't know how many people live in a room, but they're transported on buses. They end up working hard here to make money. And talk to us about typically why these folks are trying to make more money here than they maybe could in Mexico. All of those things we want to try to get into.
That's a broad question.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I guess just to frame it, along the words with our program, I think, when we think about agriculture, it is one of the most dangerous jobs. You do the research, it's going to pop up there. And the way I always start our trainings that we provide on the farm is that, the reason it's the most dangerous is because there's so many risk factors, right? So many hazards that workers are exposed to, and the risk level is high. And when you look at how to mitigate those hazards, it's by eliminating that, right? But in agriculture, you can't do that. You can't get rid of the heat. You can't get rid of, the chemicals that are being used if you're a conventional big farm. So there's a lot of things that we can't control in terms of eliminating it. And so what we do is provide education or substituting ways of doing things. And that's kind of what our program does, helping the farm improve that communication. When we talk about agriculture and, in today's sense, language is one of the biggest barriers, because a lot of the work that's being done is primarily Spanish-speaking community. And, in some farms, we have people that they depend on the person that speaks the most Spanish or English, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're fluent. And so, we have, communication barriers there on the farm. And so what we do is try to help alleviate some of that. We won't be able to solve everything, but at least we help with framing that conversation, helping people. There's people on that farm that are natural leaders. They don't know it, but they are. And so with our program, we come on and we help identify that and give that sense of empowerment, that, while they might not be a vocal leader, they might be lead by example. That's a great way to create that sense of, safety and increasing that health component, not just on the farm, but even outside of it. You mentioned the housing, the transportation, accidents happen. If you have a bus full of guys, an accident happens, that's why we need to have people that, know what they're doing, that are saying that they can do the job. Most of the time, people might say that they can do a certain job because, they want to keep that job. They want to be, making more money, and that people take risks. And so, I think that's part of what our program does, is help to understand what their capacity is, and letting people know that, it's better to do things the right way and make sure that they're, communicating what their abilities are, or say that they don't know so that they can learn, because then that's when accidents happen, and not even necessarily from, you know, a new person's perspective, but, you know, we see accidents from people who have been doing agriculture for 30 years. You know, you drop your guard, you enter into your habits, and that's where we also see some of the accidents happen. And so, you know, our program, I always say it's not entertaining information to talk about. You know, nobody wants to talk about the dangers of a job, the pesticide exposure, the heat stress, you know, the equipment dangers, but it's necessary. And so, you know, we could put on a video and call it a day, but us coming onto the farm, you know, Olivia does a great job at this, you know, with her experience of, you know, doing childhood education. You know, she likes to emphasize the activities, the engagement is there. And so that creates a better learning environment for adults, because otherwise you put a video on, people are just going to snooze. And that's kind of the approach that we take with providing this. And, you know, we cover a small section of all the risks that farms have, but, you know, it's a start, and a lot of the growers really like when we come, and not just growers, but contractors as well, to come on and do these trainings, because it brings another element, it brings a more engaged element, and the workers really respond, and we have the ability to tailor it to every farm's a little bit different on what they harvest, what they do, the equipment, and this provides an opportunity to tailor it to that farm and have that conversation in a meaningful way.
Olivia, I was listening to Roberto. Something just struck me that may be important. I want to see if it is an important part. Do you feel like the program that you're presenting on safety messages to that community of people that somebody cares?
Yes, I do believe so. This morning, matter of fact, I had a training at 8 o'clock this morning with a farm not too far from here. This is an old group. We did the first training last year. So typically when we have a group that has done the training before, we like to review together just to see what they remember from last year. So the first thing that we started out was with COVID. We just did a quick overview. We talked about the updates, and then we talked about the home testing kits. So they were really happy about the testing that they can get for free now. I left something there as well, and then we started talking about the whole pesticide and heat exposure. So with pesticide, they were good about telling me what it was and how bad it can affect you. This year we did something a little different than we did last year. We implemented some kind of hands-on activities. So I had like a little bag with some fake fruits. So I made sure that I told them they weren't real, so they don't eat them. Mm-hmm. So they had like some powder, baby powder sprayed on them. I gave it to them. I let them examine them for 5 minutes, and then we reviewed about what was that white thing that they saw without me telling them what it was. The first thing they said was residue, which is the excess of the pesticide whenever they're sprayed. Mm-hmm. So what is pesticide? So pesticide is a chemical that is sprayed to eliminate some of the weeds, some of the bugs, and also fungus that can produce on the plants. So that was good. They remember what it was. And then we went into detail and more in depth about what can we do to prevent this type of pesticide exposure. How can we prevent this from coming into our household? So they were good about telling me, well, we need to wear protective gear, so a gown, face mask, mm-hmm. boots, gloves. How can we do this at home? Taking shoes off before going inside the house, washing hands, taking off the clothing, separating them from the clean clothing, washing them immediately. So just these things kind of like makes me feel good, because I know that they remembered. I know that the message that I left with them last year, they still remember what it was this year.
Do you get calls occasionally from folks, or for example, when you leave, do they have a number that they can call if they want more information or if they feel like they've missed something? And if you do you get calls from folks? So
usually growers, we leave a business card with them. or we usually provide like a training log where each of the guys that did the training, they are to sign the form, and on the top of it has like our information. So if they need more information, or if they want us to go back to do another type of training or go more in depth about it, they can always call us and we can arrange a time and we can go out there again.
So they have that opportunity.
Yes.
If something comes up and they
Yeah.
say, well, I remember so and so, but I was not sure whether I needed to wear gloves here or not, or they could just pick up the phone and the communication is free from the actual worker to you guys. Is
Yeah.
what I guess.
And I think, there's things that we might not be able to offer, right? Because, a person's need can be all over the place. And when you talk about farm workers, you add another layer because of location, access, things like that. So, we focus on the health and safety, both on and off the farm. And if there's a service that we don't do, I mentioned earlier the importance of collaborating, partnering with, both state and health agencies and stuff like that. So, when they do call us and it's something that we can't offer, that's the whole point of this whole system working together, to provide, connecting with the service that they need. So we'll connect them with the right person or service that they're looking for. And that could be work related or not.
And that's important, that continued connection. I mean, you don't really ever necessarily just leave them. They know that once you give them the information and you explain it to them, that you're still there.
Yes.
Exactly. And we're a small program. We get in North Carolina, depending on what statistic you're looking at, we get around 70,000 farm workers to the state, both migrating here or people that work here year round in different ways. And that's not even including the families of some of these farm workers. So, we can't do that by ourselves. So we need to work with partners to meet that need.
We're going to take another break and come back and kind of get into a little bit more that individual, that person that at one time you were. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about farm worker safety right here in the southeastern area of North Carolina. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. Call a friend.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on the last segment of We Should Know. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. I want to thank you for sending your suggestions, comments to us about this show, what we do, the people we talk to. That email address is weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Easy to remember, weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Your comments, suggestions are very important to us. You can also reach us via mail, just normal snail mail, and that's Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina, 28328. Again, that's Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Thank you again for your comments, and we will try to address those as we get them. Today, we're talking about farm worker safety, and we're talking with Roberto Rosales and also Olivia Antonio-Ventura, two people that are educating the community of farm workers that come into our communities each and every year, live in the communities we live, see people in the grocery stores. They're doing vital services. Without this, Roberto, we would have definitely a problem in getting the food on the shelves in the grocery stores. Let's talk a bit about that journey and some of the things that you're educating that are critical to those people as far as keeping them safe so they don't get injured or hurt on the farm. But the other part of that is for us to understand the role they play. There's multiple areas, we talked a bit about this on break, in which folks come into the country to do these jobs. Tell us what kind of programs, I think there's 3 different programs primarily, that folks enter the country to work in these areas. and what is the likelihood and numbers that's involved in each one of those programs?
Yeah, so, I think when we talk about farm workers, we typically put them in one group. But, when we talk about farm worker or ag labor, the people who have done the labor intensive part of farming, it's always been evolving. If you think about the history, it was the families, children that were doing the labor. Mm-hmm. And then, indentured servants, slaves, the Black community, mm-hmm. It's always continued to evolve. And here in the United States, because of immigration policies, a lot of that has affected, who is doing the work now and how, that's affecting how we get our food to our table. So, when we talk about this type of work and really it's just to help us guide and understand how we can better serve them. We talk about generally 3 different groups. We talk about, people, typically think about migrant farm workers as people who migrate following the harvest. And that's kind of what we talked about earlier, like how our family was, doing as that labor force was changing with, opportunities, being a part of the communities that they were coming into, being, a consumer in that community as well. Our families decided to stay. They liked the area. They thought it was a, good opportunity for us to grow and have a different career if we wanted to outside of agriculture. And that's the group that we typically, consider as seasonal. So they still work in agriculture, but they're going back home within the same area that they're living and working. And then we have this newer, well, not necessarily newer, but it's a program that's gotten more popular in the last 10 years, which is called the ACE-2A Guest Worker Visa Program. And with that, it's the only way people can come legally to provide, labor and, through that guest worker visa program. And typically that's for, 10 months and can be extended if needed. But typically that group is, working on a farm for those 10 months, providing with, and so the different challenges and needs that those 3 groups have vary. And so that's why we kind of like differentiate them, because that helps us understand better some of the challenges and services that they might need, where, when we talk about migrant and seasonal, we'll have a mixture of people that are, have legal status in this country with people who might be undocumented. So, there's going to be barriers to all of that, where when we talk about, on the guest worker visa program, people are coming over. They might be housed in a mobile or a building, and you'll have 50 to 100 people in different camps, housing situations, and so they might not have transportation. So there's all these different outside external factors that affect how they work, how they live, and so it's our job to kind of help and provide that connection and understanding. The health and safety part that we've mentioned a lot already on the farm, but what are the people, the people outside of agriculture, do they know what's going on? So we do a lot of presentations, going out into the community, helping people understand that farming, farmers are an important part of all of this, but farm workers are right there along with them, and they, to get that crop or crops out of the ground into the transportation system, onto the grocery store or farmers market, that's all like an integral part to all of that. And so that's kind of what we do as program educators to help educate farm workers on health and safety, but also the general community of what needs and services are needed for that community.
Olivia, do you have programs, or is there plans to have programs in public schools to educate children in public schools to understand what these programs are, where we have families that are living here that are farm workers?
So we don't have a specific program, but we do provide this type of trainings to like the school systems or other community agencies in our county. For example, usually the East Coast Migrant Head Starts, that we have one in Newton Grove and then we have one in Faison. They usually call us to provide like pesticide training for their families during a family night. So we do arrangements and we go out to them and then we do them the whole training. And then as far as like the school system, I like to work with my other agents at the extension office. So lately I've been working with Eileen. So she's doing a whole program about sweet potatoes. So I've been with her to the last few ones that she's did, and we implemented the whole safety with working with sweet potatoes. So she started out with talking about what sweet potatoes is and how you can grow them. And then I ended it out with what can you use and how can you protect yourself whenever you're working with sweet potatoes. So when working with sweet potato, we get exposed to pesticide as well without even knowing it. So one thing that I did was I was able to tell the kids that, well, this is the type of clothes you need to wear. This is the type of PPEs, supplies that you need to have in hand whenever you're out there working. And then also talking to them about heat stress and letting them know how heat can affect you whenever you're working under long hours at a farm or picking.
If somebody is listening to this show, we've got a lot of steeples in this community. And by that, I mean, we've got a lot of churches and faith-based organizations. If somebody says, well, I'd love to have more information at a church meeting or something, do you guys go out and actually inform the larger community on what's going on in their community, in the migrant worker community?
Yeah, so, that's what I was mentioning. I think for us, it's really important to get this information to the general public because, agriculture keeps growing, but the people that are doing the work, it's less. So we need to continue, telling people, educating people of the importance of, all the components around agriculture. And our primary focus is a farm worker. So yeah, definitely they can reach out to either Olivia or directly with me. If you're outside of Sampson County, I'm the program coordinator. So I kind of go all over the place and do these segments to talk about, the challenges, how connecting people. And if anybody wants to help, like I mentioned, it's a grant funded program. So we're always looking for how can we build, more educators to be in these areas that are, that need this position. And so, we're in the process of expanding, but, it doesn't come cheap. So any help, any connections, things like that are always helpful in building that resilience in our community through a program like ours.
And the sustainability of this program too, Olivia, is what Roberto's talking about. So grant funds or resources, or somebody says, well, we want to support the program. How can we do that? Everything from supplies to folks doing this kind of thing is critical. So
we're more than happy to accept all those. They would have to go through Roberto. So Roberto will be the contact person for all that.
Hats, shirts, stuff like that. There's always drives happening, but I think, that's something that's always needed to help farm workers protect themselves. So, anything, or you have a question about how, you can help, connect with us and we can definitely, there's always something that is greatly appreciated from the ag community.
And they can reach you for locally at the Cooperative Extension office here, 910-592-7161. And we'll put some numbers up on the screen here for the TV folks that are watching. And also we'll get that number out to the radio folks that are listening. So we want to make sure that we reach as many people as we can. You got about 5 seconds. If anything you need to say, Roberto?
No, yeah, I think that all of this is important for everybody to be a part of, and we want to build that together. So, connect with us, your local cooperative extension. They're familiar with our farm worker program, so reach out to them and they'll connect you with us because we're the only farm worker program in extension. So, but there's a lot of programs that extension is doing around farm workers. So feel free to reach out.
About 3 seconds.
We're just trying to get this program out there with a lot of farm workers, and we hope that other growers will listen to this and they can allow us to train their guys.
thank you both for being with us today. Look forward to having you back and kind of give us an update on what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again each and every week right here. And as always, we close this show by saying, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.